My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is a general surgery PGY2 resident at the University of Chicago. And so within this episode, we talked a lot about their residency, access to healthcare, being queer, non-binary in the medical field. We also talked about their experience with queer representation within the medical field. This was a really great episode. They also talked a little bit about what they like to do when they're not in the hospital. I know you're going to enjoy this episode.
Dem Bois. Amplifying, transmitting, color voices, yeah, we here making noise, yeah. Visibility equals possibility, you know we them boys, yeah.
Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is a non-binary general surgery resident at the University of Chicago. Outside of the hospital, they enjoy running and lifting to keep them sane. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. I just want to get into all of the things. We kind of were chatting and up before we started recording, but I'm so excited to have you here. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for folks to know who you are, name and pronouns?
Sure. My name is Taylor Chiang. I'm a general surgery resident. I use they, them pronouns. I am originally from Princeton, New Jersey, but in the last year and a half moved to Chicago for residency.
Oh, so you went from New Jersey to so cold to even more cold.
Correct.
Nice. So I really want to get into this surgery thing because I'm just so intrigued. You are the first person on this show to actually be a surgeon, and I think this is so amazing. It shows the vastness of our experiences within our trans identities. And so I just want to ask you. So you are a PGY2 general surgery resident. What is that?
So I'm in a 7-year general surgery training program. And so each year you're a different PGY year. So I'm a PGY2, so I'm in my second year of clinical training. And it means I'm considered I'm not an intern, which is the first year's PGY1, but I am a second year. And so I'm still considered a junior resident. And so I have my senior residents and attendings supervise me when I do things, but I have a little bit more experience than the interns who have only been here for almost a year.
Wow. Okay. I get that. So PGY2, got you. Okay. Yeah. That's so general surgery. That's like anything.
Yeah. So general surgery residency usually covers we do things in the abdomen. We also train under doing vascular procedures. The things that we don't cover, which I think is probably easier for people to conceptualize, is head and neck, ENT, neurosurgery. We don't do neurosurgery, or orthopedics. So bones, we don't do bones. And then urology is kidney, bladder. We usually call them in when we have to kind of deal with that stuff. And then the other kind of surgical specialty is plastic surgery, so that they kind of are an expert in skin reconstruction, kind of somewhat the cosmesis of some of the other surgeries that we do.
So general surgery, would that kind of be considered emergency room surgery?
Yeah. If you came into the emergency room and you needed your appendix out, that would be us.
Got you. Okay. All right. That's so exciting. I love that. So I'm gonna come back to that. Because I'm too excited. So I'm gonna come back to that. But I love to ask my guests about their names and about our names. And so, how did that name Taylor? How did that name choose you?
I think it's funny because my parents gave me my name Taylor, but when I asked them about it, I asked when you're a kid, what were other names that I was going to be named as, that hypothetical child, and one of them was Ashley, which I think is so funny because it's so not me. And I think if I was named Ashley, I would have gone by Ash. And then I think my dad wanted a gender neutral name. So that's how Taylor came to be. But I feel like it fits me very well. I like my name. Something that's funny about my name is that, so kind of going back to being a resident, when we write notes in the EMR, the electronic medical record, we can see our own names. And so I have a middle name that is more feminine. It's Jacqueline. And my name got registered in the EMR as Taylor Jacqueline Chiang. And I remember seeing that as an intern and just seeing my name every day looking like that, like Taylor Jacqueline Chiang. I was like, I have to email someone to change that. I just want to see like Taylor Chiang. So I do like my name. But yeah, that was kind of like a funny experience, realizing that like I don't mind my middle name, but I don't want to see it every day.
I don't want to see it every day. Yeah. Was it an easy thing to change, the process?
Relatively. I called a few people and I sent a few emails, and it was relatively easy to change, which was good.
Okay. So, but why would they put your full name anyway? Isn't that kind of long anyway? Why not just initials?
Yeah. I mean, that's totally true. It's very interesting. Some people have like just their initials, or if they go by a different name, they have that name on the EMR. I think it's generally what you put when you go through HR. And sometimes, at least for me, I don't think I realized when I put that name down for HR that like that would transfer over to the electronic medical record as well. But it is in like, they do have my middle name like in the system.
Okay, but I wanted to ask, is that for kind of like responsibility purposes of like not having a nickname, not having initials, because they want to know exactly who put this in the chart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's partially it. But everything that we do gets tracked. So they would be able to find it even if it was under like a different name.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay. And so when we talk about like your non-binary identity, I want to know like, when was there a moment in your life with that moment you're like, this is who I am, and how did that equal into who you are today?
Yeah. I think I came out as non-binary when I was like 20 years old. So like in college, it was like kind of like my sophomore, junior year of college. I played women's lacrosse in college, and I remember like getting a haircut and like cutting my hair short for probably the second time in my life. And I feel like that was like the real transition. But before that, I kind of always knew that in terms of my gender identity, just being a girl didn't quite fit right. So when I got to college, when I was like 18, I was always like a tomboy, and I kind of swung the other way. I was trying to figure out if I was a trans man, and I got really into like buying men's clothes and like being more masculine presenting and not liking, feminine colors or florals or whatever. So I kind of swung the other way. And then I realized that wasn't necessarily like also right for me. And eventually I just kind of like leaned back into being somewhere in the middle. I also remember I didn't hear the word or the term non-binary for quite a bit. I heard like gender fluid, gender queer, and those like in theory fit kind of how I was feeling, but they didn't feel right to me to describe myself. So when I found the term non-binary, I felt like that actually fit for me.
I know we all have our differences in understanding of what it means, right? And so I always say all the time transmasculine, because that's just what I identify with. And some people say other things, right? And non-binary, what does that specifically mean to you? Like if somebody asks you, they met you and say, hey, Taylor, what does non-binary mean to you?
Yeah, I think to me, it means that I don't identify as a woman. I don't identify as a man. I identify with aspects of each, and I lay somewhere in the middle, but not necessarily if you think of the binary as like a line. I don't think I like lie like smack in the middle of that line. I like to think of it as like a third point, like almost like a triangle, where like I exist not in the linear path, just somewhere in the middle of the two, but not linearly. So either above, below, whatever. Think of it more like a triangle, where I feel like I can take aspects of like what it means to be masculine and what it means to be feminine. And while all of those are social constructs and we kind of make those up in society, I can take parts of each of those things and make it my own. So ultimately it doesn't feel like masculine. It doesn't feel feminine.
So many times I've heard like past guests or just people in general say that they've discovered themselves in college. I remember when I was growing up, that was one of the things that my mom always was, I won't say forbid about this higher education, but she'd always, because I grew up in church. And so she always say, every time people go off to college, they come back different, or they, you get this kind of understanding. Obviously you're away from your parents, you're away from your family members, you're around other peers, and you're able to explore ideas that you never had access to, or language or books for, or whatever, classes or whatever. Right. And you start to discover yourself. And so you went off to college. Your parents sent you off, or who your caretakers sent you off. They want you to get this education. And so when you learned and discovered yourself, what did your people back home say?
I think I think my parents looked at it at the time was I had always been a tomboy. So this was just kind of almost like an extension of that. If I'm being perfectly honest, we don't really currently. I have a great relationship with my parents now. It's gotten so much better over the years. But if I'm being completely honest, in terms of like the non-binary, transgender world vernacular, we don't really acknowledge that, and we don't really talk about it. And that is something that I've accepted and I'm okay with. But so going back to your question, in college, I think they just saw it as an extension of being like a tomboy. They knew that I dated women, so that was fine by their book. They didn't love the way that I dressed because it felt antithetical to me being like their girl, their child, their daughter. They let me run with it for a little bit. But I do think it caused some significant tension in my relationship with my parents. But ultimately, being away from them, like continuously going to college, getting a job after college, and kind of like living my own life, and them consistently visiting me because I still had a relationship with them, that this wasn't necessarily going to change. Like this wasn't a phase. This wasn't like just me being a tomboy. I think it just settled in their mind eventually that this was going to be a long-term thing. Like I was never going to go back and like wear a dress to like an interview and stuff like that.
So you say you don't talk about it though. So you just, hey mom, hey dad, and just nothing else in between. Like how does that work for you? Like how does that feel for you internally to kind of have to silence pieces of yourself?
I guess with my parents, it's not something that like the topic of like gender identity in such explicit terms doesn't necessarily come up in conversation. It's not something that like we talk about, but how I present myself is almost like a silent, it is what it is. Like it's not something like we talk about as much anymore because it's almost like a moot point. So for example, previously when I would like buy like men's clothing, my mom may say like, oh, like why are you wearing this or why are you wearing that? And I would just kind of like shrug it off because it's more of a fight to talk about it than it is to not talk about
to
it.
ignore it.
And I think it's something that I negotiated with myself, that if I wanted to have a relationship with my parents that wasn't so fraught with tension, this was something that I would have to give up, as in like, I'm never going to be able to talk to my parents about that, but that's okay for me. I found other people that like I can talk to about this stuff, that I can go shopping with, who like don't judge me if I'm like in the men's section or the women's section or whatever. And so I think for me, what I ended up finding was more important was still having a good relationship with my parents, because it wasn't talking about my gender identity. It wasn't something that like I needed from them specifically. It's not something that I wish to essentially talk about like and dissect with my parents. I did get asked at a family dinner once if I ever wanted to transition. And that was very awkward actually, because it came from like one of my uncles, and it was like at a family dinner and I was the only like child there. And I was like, why are you guys asking me this? Like I have never talked to you about this, but clearly you heard it from somewhere like media, TV, social, something. And so this is on your mind and now you're asking me it. So that was also a very interesting experience.
Yeah, that's awkward. Did you give an answer, or did you say leave me alone? Or
I said, I personally, I think the way they phrased it was like, they said it's some version of like, we love you very much. If you ever wanted to do something like transition, like, like we love you and we would support you. And I was kind of like, I appreciate that sentiment and I appreciate you telling me that like outright, but that is not something that I am like looking to do right now. And I've thought about it, but it's not something I'm looking to do right now. And I don't know if I'm going to look to do it in the future, but I appreciate the sentiment, which is essentially what I said.
Can I ask you a personal question? So
Sure.
Going to medical school, college, did your parents pay for your education?
They did.
Okay. So the only reason why I'm asking is because I had a previous guest that I can't remember the guest at this very moment, but I'll make sure to plug it into the show notes. But one of the things that was hesitant in them in their transition was because their parents were paying for their education. So they felt like they couldn't transition or couldn't come out to their parents because, if they did, their parents would stop paying for their education. Did you ever feel that kind of pressure or anything like that?
Yeah, I think not necessarily in terms of like transition, because transitioning is not really a thing that I like fully have, right? Like that's not something that's on the path for me. But yes, do I feel like some sort of like obligation to my parents because of what they have given me and the privileges that I have? Like, absolutely, yes. And I knew that when they were paying for school and when they were paying for medical school, that it's not necessarily for free. There has to be some skin in the game for me, right? Like I could in theory like drop out of medical school, but there would be consequences for that because my parents have put, time and energy and money into this investment, which is me. So I do think that there is a little bit of like, I don't think that the investment is just because I'm their kid and this is what's going to happen. And I think that paired with the fact that I did want a relationship with them and like truly did want a relationship allowed me to have that kind of, or allowed me to kind of like negotiate with myself that like there are parts of me and things that I, could talk about that I am willing to forego to have this relationship with my parents. And I think that for me, that was the right decision because my relationship with my parents is now pretty great. Like it's much better than it was when I was 18. When I was 18, it was like fraught with tension. Whether they felt it or I felt it, like that's just the reality of it. And so like I'm thankful for my relationship with my parents now, but it didn't come like easily just because I chose not to talk about something like, and they were paying for school. Like it was a little bit of a negotiation. And I think maybe on both sides, if I ask my parents now, like a little bit on both sides, right? Like they're not going to keep commenting on like what I wear, even though they want to. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm just assuming that my mom would want to comment on what I'm wearing. And sometimes I'm just like, just stop. We don't need to.
Right. Just let it go. Like, yeah, I feel like first I want to say big ups to your parents because to pay for your child's education, that's a milestone. Right.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a privilege. And that's definitely something to honor. It's like, yo, you sacrifice your time and your money to make sure I got somewhere in life. That's big. And I know that I do listening to you speak about it. I realize that I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't talk about my gender identity with my mom either. And I think that's kind of like why we kind of get along. Like, you don't ask me, I ain't going to tell you. And so that's cool. We can say what we're going to say about everything else. And it's enough going on in the world to be talking about my gender identity. We can talk about other stuff. Right.
Right.
And that's kind of how we've gotten along. I guess I never really realized it. I guess I never really realized it. And I guess that's a good thing. And it's not really exhausting or limiting because I have people I can talk about it with. Hey, I'm talking about gender identity right here with you. Right. And it's like, I can talk about it with chosen family or other folks that I feel that can have a reciprocal conversation and I don't have to force feed it. Right. Just for the sake of having a relationship.
Absolutely. I think that, I think your point about it not feeling exhausting is also part of it too. I think every time you have these conversations with maybe someone who either doesn't understand or you have to like just put more effort into these conversations, it's emotional effort and emotional time and effort that you may not have or be willing to give. And it's not because you don't love the other person. It's just that like in that moment, this is not the thing that I want to spend my energy on. When I have other people where I can talk to about these things and it doesn't take as much energy. And I would rather spend my energy talking about, I don't know, what we're having for dinner instead. And we can argue about that.
Definitely. And that's always an argument, at least in my experience, because I never know what the hell I want to eat.
I know.
The Visibility Equals Possibility collection has new designs and a new designer, me. My name is Zion, pronouns he, him, his, and I was on episode 53 if you want to go back and check that out. But I am the second trans man of color to design for the Visibility Equals Possibility collection. Dem Bois believes visibility equals possibility, and so do I. I am honored to take part in this groundbreaking collection and look forward to seeing what else the collection has in store. My designs represent having confidence and courage to be bold with your visibility. The design, in my mind, says, take the caution you need, but I am here. I hope you all enjoy the designs, and be sure to purchase some designs from me or Emilio to support gender-affirming programs by Dem Bois. Find the amazing designs of the Visibility Equals Possibility collection and other merch items that I've designed on the Dem Bois shop at dembois.org. That's DEMBOI as in igloo s.org. And remember, visibility equals possibility.
When was the shift? Did you always go into college and say you wanted to go to medical school? Was that something that you always wanted to do, or was there a shift in your idea of what you wanted to do in the future?
I knew I wanted to do something, I think, science or medicine adjacent when I went to college, undergrad. But if I'm being perfectly honest, when I was an undergrad, I thought there were in my brain, there were three jobs. It was like a lawyer, a teacher, and a doctor. And I understand that is so rudimentary in that is just not how the world works. But for some reason in my brain those were the three boxes, and you could take a path to kind of get to each one. Even though obviously I understand now that there are many different ways to get from point A to point B. So of those three things, I kind of picked doctor and ran with it until and things ended up working in that way. Because I saw that goal and I ran towards it without really looking at other things, if I'm being honest, because I didn't know what other options there were.
So are you feeling fulfilled in this moment as you are in year 2?
I do. I really like what I do. It's exhausting and it's time consuming, but I know that I've made the right choice in picking a general surgery residency, and on the days that it feels good, it feels really good.
And so, we can't be in our professions and our careers without bringing all of ourselves in it with us, right? And so how has your identity played in your career? As far as with your peers, maybe with patients, how has that played out so far?
Yeah, I think overall with my peers, my colleagues, my co-residents, they've all been great. I don't think pretty much almost everyone uses the correct pronouns, and I can talk freely either about gender or queerness or make jokes about it, and it's kosher and it's fine. With patients, it's always interesting. So I do have my name badge, and everyone has the name badge, and everyone has the pronouns on their name badge. So it's not just me, it's everybody. Everyone here has he, him, she, her, she, they, them, whatever. So everyone has it. But funny enough, attendings and patients never seem to use it and never seem to understand why it's there or why it exists. Because I get misgendered all the time by patients. Now, for me, I know that for me, that is, I guess, part of the job that I accept. And maybe that is me being too kind of compliant to how the hospital and the hospital structure is, or deferential to the patient. But I get misgendered all the time by patients, and I am okay with it, because in that moment, it's not about me. It's not about my pronouns. It's about the care that I'm trying to give to this patient or the scenario that is happening here. And it honestly has nothing to do with my gender, right? It has nothing to do with my gender. And I'm here to communicate information. They are here to hear information. They're here to ask questions. And that is the most important thing to me. So in terms of patients, while it would be lovely if they could get pronouns right, most of them don't. And that is okay from my perspective.
I saw a video recently, and a woman was explaining, it was a Black woman, she was explaining how we use gender, they, them, all the time and not realizing it, right? Like if somebody left their keys, they're like, I don't know who these are, but they left their keys, right? And it's so simple. So how is it that people can't put it into the same relationship when you see an actual person and it's right there on your name badge? This is like a little red lanyard that's connected to your name badge or a color, right?
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. And so, and I don't know. I commend you for willing, because obviously, right, when you're in the medical field and you're a doctor, surgeon, the care, it's about the patient. That's the number one concern. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for this person while they're in your care. And so to put that to the side, I commend you for that. But have you ever had moments where you call me something else one more time and I'm not going to give you the utmost care? I know you probably, I'm hoping you don't do that, but do you ever have those moments where that you had to correct somebody because it just bothers you that much?
My general rule of thumb for myself is I don't correct people because I don't like to. It makes me feel more uncomfortable in the moment to correct someone, because then if they get it wrong after I've corrected them in that same interaction, it feels worse for me because I've now told you and you have now either chosen or have forgotten in the last 30 seconds what I just told you. So for me, I generally try not to correct people. I ask other people to correct other people, and preferably when I'm not in the room, because then the whole thing happens where someone corrects someone else when I'm in the room, and then it becomes this whole apology thing. They're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. I'm like, it's okay. Can we just move on?
Right.
Just do better next time. It's okay. We'll move on. But yes, I've definitely had interactions where people are talking about me in the room, and all I hear is like, she, her. And it just becomes so obvious that I'm like, just use something else.
Yeah.
Or I walk out of the interaction, I'm just like, you could use anything else, but I can just hear it echoing in my head and being like, they're not getting it.
Yeah. And just say doctor and your last name. Dr. Taylor, Dr. Chiang. Say something else. What? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel too people, especially if they're seeing you, they obviously need some help because you're a surgeon, right? So there's some care. So I think that people are kind of cloudy in the brain. It seems like it's like being in an airport when you're traveling. You're not looking. I swear in airports, people forget they can read because the sign right there says gate, whatever, and you asking somebody and it's literally right there. But I think it's the same thing in a hospital, right? You're so concerned about your care and your health and what's going on with you that all that other shit is kind of second nature. You're not really actually thinking to process any other thing. I mean, I'm just making excuses for people, I guess, because I wouldn't do that. If I see your pronouns on your badge, I'm going to say exactly that. But I also have experience with that, right? So it's, some people just don't. And they're just one track mind well, you got to operate on my stomach. And so I'm scared and I don't, you know what I mean? It's they're not really thinking about that.
Yeah, I think there are other things that patients are worrying about in the hospital. And ultimately, that's why I say it's not about me. It's not about my gender identity. It's not that they're trying to be offensive. It's just that they have other things on their mind. And also patients meet a lot of people when they come into the hospital. They meet nurses, they meet techs, they meet residents, they meet attendings. And honestly, we all introduce ourselves when we come into the room, but there are so many people, they are not going to remember half of our names, who is talking to them. There's a bunch of different teams. We all wear all of us wear the same colored scrubs. I hold up my badge, but look, if I'm waking you up at 6 a.m, you're not reading my badge. Right. So with patients, I really don't think about it too much. I think it's different though when I work with attendings and they misgender me, because those are people who I actually spend a good amount of time with, and they get to know me over the years. I'm in this program for a long time, and they know who I am, and they know, they ask me what I'm interested in going into. And so we start to develop this relationship. And so when attendings misgender me, that's a little bit more frustrating, because I know for a fact that they know what my pronouns are. And whether they have forgotten or not, it still can be frustrating, because I like them. I like them, and I think that they like me, and I think we have a good relationship, and yet they aren't using my correct pronouns.
Yeah. Now that can be frustrating. It's we have a 7-year relationship. This is a relationship, goddammit. We got to see each other for 7 years. Get my shit right,
Yeah.
So What is the landscape of queer representation in your experience in the medical field?
Not that much, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Like I let's see. When I was in medical school, I I don't think I had that many attendings that were queer. Maybe like two, and I can't even remember who they are,
Mm,
because I would be guessing on their identity, right?
mm,
Like it wasn't necessarily something that they shared explicitly or made known to other medical students or residents. Residence wise, again, we exist and we're here, but I think that like depending on what field and what specialty, there may be more or less. I can't say that there's a ton of us in my general surgery program, but there's a few. And it's nice because we can have that shared identity and kind of talk about that and make those jokes and find that community while doing general surgery residency. But I don't think that there's great representation. And it is partially because of what queerness is, right? It's an identity that you have that is a little less visible than maybe some other identities. And usually when you share that identity, you are being vulnerable in a sense.
mm,
It's not necessarily like it's not something that I walk into a room full of strangers and I say, "Hi, my name is Taylor. I use they them pronouns and I'm queer." Like I don't say that. That's not
mm,
something that you say. And it's not something that you can necessarily see either, which I think makes it a little bit hard.
mm. Do you think it's the environment? Does the actual environment need to change? Because I'm sure, I always say it may not be a queer space, but there are queer people in that space. And so there may be more people there that you maybe even know. So do you think maybe it's the environment that has kind of like made people kind of suppress who they are?
I think a little bit because I think medicine is a very historically what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very traditional field, right? Historically, most doctors, most surgeons were white men. And so if you were going to be in this field, you had to ascribe to be kind of like that. Even if you were a woman, you had to be, compete with the guys, be just as good, maybe be just as stoic. And I think that tradition has carried on a little bit, even though we're getting better about it. But I did have an attending once tell me that he's queer but he's queer and like I know that he's queer, but he also told me like I don't go to work to be queer. And I'm like, I know and I get that. I also don't go to work to be queer, but it feels good to know that there is someone else who shares his identity in this community with me at work, even if we're not talking about being queer at work.
Mm,
And I don't know how to necessarily convey that to other attendings who feel the same way. But I think ultimately it's just the sense of like wanting to belong to a community, even if that's within work. And I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, it does. So we talked about queer identities. What about people of color in the medical field? From your experience, how many people of color are we seeing on a day to day?
I think it's gotten better over the years, but I think that, people of color are largely underrepresented in medicine, especially, if you're talking about surgical specialties, even more. We don't see people of color who are surgeons, like almost ever. We can talk about the statistics of Black men who are surgeons, and that is very, very few. And so I think it's important having that representation for people of color, having the representation for people who are queer, and because otherwise people will continue to have this perception of what it means to be in medicine, who the doctors are, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we've all, at least in the medical field, we've all heard countless of stories of like a female surgeon walking into a room with like a male medical student, and then the patient just defers to the male medical student. You're like, "Are you the doctor?" And he's like, "I'm the medical student. Your surgeon is right here." Like we've all heard those stories. But I think that's one of the reasons why it's like so important to be visible and have recruitment value these things, because I do think it makes a difference.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And so then I want to ask you then, do you have any advice for somebody who is gender diverse and they like, I want to get into this field, but I know for one, it's expensive, right? Because it's a whole bunch of things of why folks don't get into this, right? And we talk, we can go on. There can be a list just from subpar education, just from the beginning on up, right? We could talk about finances, we could talk about races, we could talk about all these things. What if there is someone listening that is determined and say, no, I want to get into this field regardless? Do you have any advice or things that you can leave for that person?
My advice would be like, keep going. There's going to be people every step of the way, whether those are like guidance counselors or bosses, or like there's going to be so many people who will tell you that, you know, you don't have the grades for it, or you don't have the research for it, or you can't do it, or it's something, or you won't like get into medical school the first round or something like that. But I think that if you really want to do it, you can do it. And I think that once you're in it, you just got to find the people who will support you. And they don't necessarily have to share your identities. That's something also that I learned in medical school, is that sometimes it's just people giving you a chance and seeing you as a person, like more than just a medical student, seeing you as a person, that really made the difference for me in choosing surgery when I was in medical school. And so I think that finding community in the field once you're in it is also really important. And it's going to take time. You're not going to instantly get it. I didn't instantly get it. And I think people expect that it's just going to come to them, or like they'll get into medical school and they'll find an attending and that'll be their person. And if that works for them, that's great. And I'm so happy that they got it on, like right on the first try. But for so many people, it does not work out like that on the first try. And that's okay. You're going to meet people who, you know, don't get your identity, who don't get what you're trying to do. You just go find somebody else. There's someone out there who is going to support like what you want to do and how you want to do it.
And so even then, as a surgeon, as a doctor, what if somebody listening that is that? How can, you know, because it goes both ways, right? You as a surgeon or a doctor, you want folks in your field that see you for who you are. But what about patients who want doctors and surgeons to see them for who they are? Anything you have to say about that? I mean, because I say this because as a Black trans man, and I've recently experienced some health issues. I don't talk about this much, but I literally had to beg a doctor to see my pain, and see, you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, wanting that respect in another way from the doctor. So what, do you have anything that you could say in that regard?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's about like actually listening to your patients. And I think that there are, like, from the medical side, right, the doctor side, there are so many constraints, whether that's administrative or time or having to see more patients. But I think that even taking the time to listen for a few more minutes, especially to a patient who's willing to share something about their life, I think makes all the difference. Because when you know a little bit more about your patient and your patient knows a little bit more about you, that relationship, I think, becomes better. You both are willing to see the other person as a person and not just like, I'm a patient and you're a doctor. I'm coming to you for something and you're going to give me something. It makes the relationship feel more real than just transactional.
I love that. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. So from whatever platform that you're listening to this week's episode on, please be sure to give us 5 stars. And if there's something within this episode, whether it's the guest or something that I said, or maybe the guest said that resonated with you, be sure to go and leave us a comment on this episode or leave us a comment on the show. So what happens is, if you feel like it resonated with you, I'm sure there's someone out there who hasn't even heard about Dem Bois Podcast. It may resonate with them, and actually it could save someone's life. To hear these stories, right? Because we believe that visibility equals possibility, but there isn't any possibility if we aren't visible. So if you go and leave comments, the more comments you leave, the more 5-star ratings you leave, then this podcast will be available to more folks to see. And so we want to be visible. We want to be out there. We want folks to know that we're here and that our stories are out there for them to listen to. And so if you could do me a favor, please go ahead and rate the show or leave a comment. Until next time, see you on the next episode. So you spend all your time at the hospital. So you mentioned before that you're on call. So that to me, I was like, on call. So that means you're going to wake me up from my nap and I got to be attentive to you when I'm trying to sleep? No. So what do you do outside of the hospital? Like what brings you joy and keeps you sane?
Yeah. I run a lot.
Okay.
I got into long distance running when I was in medical school, and I like to run. It gets me time outside. Like you said, I'm in the hospital a lot. So going for a long run, at least gets me out of the house for like an hour or two, gives me like the endorphins. I enjoy lifting. I've always enjoyed lifting. I think just physical activity is the thing that has kept me sane like all of these years. Like I said, I used to play lacrosse in college. And just keeping that and making it like almost like a non-negotiable has truly been the thing for me. And residency is super hard and I spend so much time in the hospital, but like every chance that I do get, I do spend trying to do some sort of physical activity because it makes me happy and keeps me sane. I think I'm a better person. I think I'm a better doctor for it. Because I get to be, not that I'm not happy in the hospital, but like I get to do something that I really enjoy that is not related to work.
Right. And you're doing something for you and not for others. Because in the hospital, you're doing for others and less for yourself.
Yeah. And like that's part of the job and I do love it. But yes, I also would like to do something for myself once in a while.
Right. And so did you ever have a moment, because you say your parents pay for your education. Have you had a moment where your parents said, hey, we're proud of you?
Yeah. I recently actually shared this video because it was recently Match. Like Match is a day where like the fourth year medical students find out where they're going for residency. It's like the big day that no one really cares about, like graduation, like the end of your medical school when you get their degree. Like that's really great too. And it's special, but Match is like the day that everyone cares about because it means where you're going, what you've matched into in the specialty, like what you're going to be a doctor in and like where you're going to go for the next X, Y, Z years. And I recently reposted a video from my match day and it was a video of me opening like you don't know where you're going until you like open a letter.
Okay.
It's this whole other process that I could talk about, but you don't know where you're going and you open this letter. And it was the University of Chicago, and the video is like my dad also looking over my shoulder because I didn't say it immediately. And then he like very aggressively hugged me. And it's one of my favorite videos because I feel like that encapsulates like how proud of me my dad was. And he said it that day too. And he said it before, but I feel like I have like a visualization of that moment. And that is really special to me.
Okay, so now I've got questions about this match day. Okay, so are you familiar with Harry Potter?
Yes.
Okay, so is this kind of like Hogwarts where they get to the school and they find out which house they're gonna be in?
Kind of, except that you've spent, 4 years of your life trying to, do well in school and get your letters and write an application. And I think the difference between like Hogwarts and like the Sorting Hat and whatnot is, there is a chance that you don't match. There's a chance that you go through all of medical school and there's the possibility that you can graduate with an MD, but you cannot have a job. The match determines whether or not you're going to have a job for the next couple of years in that specialty. So that is like a difference between Harry Potter and
So
match day.
Do you put out there into the universe or like, do you put out where you want to go or they just automatically pair you with somewhere?
The way the match works is that you apply to a bunch of different programs. They offer you interviews. You go to the interviews. And essentially you create a list of the places that you've interviewed at, what your number one choice, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, all the way down. The programs for everyone that they interview also creates a rank list. Their top applicant, their second applicant, and they go down a list. So those two lists, all of the med students in that specialty goes into an algorithm. The rank lists from the programs go into an algorithm, and it optimizes, or it's supposed to optimize the applicants. So like if my number one choice is like University of Chicago, and they also want me, then I will match there. But obviously it has to take everybody into account. So there is the possibility that like someone doesn't match because programs run out of spots also.
That's intense. That's stressful. Just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, that's stressful. So, okay. So so was University of Chicago your first choice?
It was my second. Okay. But I was very happy with it. And honestly, it probably should have been my first, if I'm being honest.
Okay. You want to share what your first was?
It was Northwestern, which is really funny because I knew nothing about either of Chicago programs. Like I didn't really know a whole lot about it when I applied. Like I kind of just applied broadly. My main prerogative was to be in a large city. So I had applied to like Chicago programs, and then I got interviews from both of those places. And I was very surprised because it just really wasn't on my radar. Like I have family in San Francisco. I'm from the East Coast. Like it was just a surprise to me. And then when I did Zoom interviews because it was kind of COVID or coming out of COVID time. So we had transitioned to like Zoom interviews. And so honestly, I didn't really, even when I interviewed, I knew like the basics of each program and like what each program could offer. It's funny if I look at my old rank lists of like just based on a couple different things, like, but one of them was just based purely on vibes. Chicago was first because, and I probably should have ranked it that way too, like looking back on it, but I didn't because I just had this like preconceived notion of like what Chicago looked like and like what different parts of the city could offer me or what programs could offer me. And honestly, I'm super happy where I ended up.
Okay. Oh, so you got lucky there. Okay. So can you be a B and C student and still graduate from medical school? Is it like you got to hit all A's? Because like, right, what if you know?
Like as in like you do not have to be a straight A student to go into medical school or to be a doctor.
Okay. So if you're a C student, you can still be an amazing doctor because I mean, some people aren't good test takers. Some people are not good with schoolwork, but they just get things. So is that a possibility?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Are there things that you'll have to do and explain in like your application? Absolutely. Because like folks are going to ask you about that. Like admissions officers are going to ask you about that. But getting a C in organic chemistry, which is a prerequisite to like going to medical school. It's a class that you take. Getting a C in organic chemistry does not dictate how good of a doctor you're going to be. And everybody knows that. Like attendings know that, admissions people know that, residents, we all know that. And yet we still use it as like a metric for who is like willing to put in the work almost to get into like go to medical school and like do the prerequisites. But yeah, I think if you get B's and C's, you absolutely can be a doctor. I remember in college crying over like a B- that I got in organic chemistry because I thought I wasn't going to be a doctor. And that's just so dumb looking at it. Obviously hindsight is 20/20, but it's so dumb.
Right. But now here you are.
Right.
Right.
So it's completely possible. And even if like, again, you're not a good test taker, there are ways and strategies that people can like help you. And like, not everyone is a good test taker. I don't think I'm a great test taker. I'm okay at tests, like standardized test taking. But I remember applying for medical school. You have to take an exam. It's called the MCAT. You have to get a score and then you can use that score to apply to medical school. I took the MCAT twice. The first time, I don't even remember what the like, it's not like 0 to 100, like a normal test. It's on a different scale. What they told me at the time was you need to score like a 510 or above to be a good applicant for medical school. I scored less than a 500. Like I didn't even come close. And I was like, okay, well, something's got to give and something's got to change. But just because I took it again and I did reach a 510 doesn't mean, again, that I wasn't going to make a good doctor, and didn't mean that I wasn't going to get into medical school. It just meant that like I needed to change my strategy on how I studied. And if I still wanted to do this thing, I could. It wasn't all of these barriers are deeply annoying because I don't think they dictate who is going to make a good doctor.
Mm.
But I think if you understand that, it is like, if you understand that these are just like metrics that you have to hit and you hit them, like you can do it.
Mm.
Because it doesn't dictate if you're going to be a good doctor. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was gonna for clarification. Are you saying that kind of like these hurdles are put up to prevent certain people from getting over them in the first place?
I do kind of think so, actually, because I do think one of the huge bottlenecks of entrance into the medical field is getting into medical school. It's not undergrad. It's not the prereq courses necessarily to get into medical school. I personally think that the bottleneck is if you can get into medical school. If you can get into medical school, you will be in touch with, attendings, professors, people who can kind of corral you, even if you're not like have anyone in medicine, you can kind of figure out like how to get to where you want to go. Because you have the resources at that point. But before medical school, no one teaches you how to get in. No one teaches you like what you have to do to get in, what programs or what schools are looking for, right? Like, do I need to volunteer? Do I need to do research? Do I need to, I don't know, play sports? Do I need to get straight A's? Like, no one tells you all of those things. And the reality is like, no, you don't have to have straight A's. No, you don't have to do research. You don't have to do like all of these things that people or like you think that you might have to do. You just have to have, I think, like a compelling story and something that you are dedicated about. And if you can spin that in a way that is healthcare related, I think that like that is the most compelling argument for someone getting into med school. I truly think the bottleneck is getting into med school.
So are you saying all of that to say that you're going to be a mentor for queer and trans folks who want to get into med school? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I would love to. What was it? When I got into residency, I like posted it on my social media like most people do. And I had folks reach out to me about like, like they also want to go into surgery and they didn't know how to get into surgery, or like they're wondering like, what do they need to get into surgery, or do programs care if you're queer, or how do I sell? Like if I want to put in my personal statement that I'm queer, like how do I phrase that? So it's not just, my whole essay, but it's something that they know. So they know that if they rank me, that this is something that they get, but it's not something that I'm hiding either, but it's not what I want my whole application to be like. So I did have people reach out to me who are in medical school when I like first matched. And I would love to be that person for other people, because I think people have a conception, like a vision that like we all have it together. Like I think people think that like I have it all together. I don't. I just pretend that I do, or I fake that I do until maybe I do actually have it in it together. But I just like I didn't know that I wanted to go into surgery. I kind of applied, or I kind of pivoted late, and all of that is okay.
I love that. So if folks that are listening would like to, get in contact with you or hit you up and say, hey, I have some questions about this, how can they do that? How can folks reach out to you?
They can either find me on Instagram, T_Chang_, or they can email me, Taylor.Chang15@gmail.com.
Okay. We'll make sure to plug that into the show notes. Thank you for your service for doing that for folks.
Yeah.
2026 marks 10 years of Dem Bois Inc. That's 10 years of community care, 10 years of leadership rooted in love, and 10 years of turning visibility into possibility. And so to honor this milestone, we've launched our 10 for 10 campaign. You're like, Sean, 10 for 10, what's that? So we are inviting you, our listeners, our supporters, our allies, and other folks in the community to give $10 a month to help sustain the care, leadership, and visibility that trans men of color deserve. And so 10 years is a very long time, right? That's a decade. Can you imagine raising a child from birth and then looking at them at their 10th birthday party and being like, wow, you've watched so much of their growth within that 10 years, right? That's the same for us. And so Dem Bois Inc., over the 10 years, we have done a lot. And so we have provided gender affirming surgery grants to trans men of color to obtain gender affirming surgeries. We started this podcast. We are now in season 4 of the podcast in 2026. We created our Visibility Equals Possibility merch. We partnered with Emilio and Zion, both trans men of color, to design what visibility equals possibility means to them. And it's reflected in our merch. We also partnered with the Black trans man, Mola Flow, to create our theme song. And that's the music that you hear every time you tune into Dem Bois Podcast. We've done merch. We've done partnering. We have delivered care packages to trans men of color in need of personal hygiene items within our community. We have done a lot in 10 years. And so imagine what the next 10 years would look like. Donating $10 a month says, I believe in this work. I believe in the future of trans men of color, and I believe in what comes next. And so if this call resonates with you, join us today. And we've even made it easy. You don't even got to go anywhere. Whatever platform you're listening to this episode, go ahead and open up the show notes. And from there, you will be able to click the link to start your contribution to our 10 for 10 campaign. Your monthly support helps ensure Dem Bois can continue showing up for our community with intention, care, and impact. So thank you for listening and thank you for believing in our mission. Okay, and I'm going to get out of here so you can listen to this episode. Take care. So I want to ask you this, because when we're talking about being a surgeon and being in the medical field, we also know how limiting access to healthcare can be. For folks of color, for folks now with this political climate, folks with trans identities. And so you are in a field that, you know, even with your own identity, right, is limiting to other folks on the outside. And so you want to talk a little bit more about that, about access to healthcare?
Yeah, I think the access to healthcare crisis that we have it's so frustrating because there's so many people who need care. And then once people get into the hospital for that care, I feel like people are so much sicker than they needed to be because they didn't have access to healthcare. They didn't know how to access it. Like a personal example is just, I'm a resident who has pretty good medical literacy, right? And I have a hard time trying to figure out how to schedule my own appointments around my work schedule, how to figure out if my insurance is covering this provider or not covering this provider, or like what pharmacy I have to send like medication to. And then if I send it to one pharmacy, it's covered. And if I send it to another pharmacy, it's not, even though it's the same medication. That is incredibly frustrating. And I have medical literacy. There are so many people out there who don't have that privilege, who have never, don't have any idea like what insurance is talking about half the time. And like they can't get care, or they're forced to get care and then pay for it when there is like an alternative if they had the medical literacy to figure out like where to go, that was covered under their insurance. But personally, I don't think that's their fault at all. Like I think it's the insurance companies, because it's so dumb how that works. And I think being in the medical field, it's like one of the most frustrating things is making sure people get the right access to care, because you see so many people need it and you see how many people don't have access to it and how quickly people can lose it once they're like out of the hospital. Like once we discharge people, like that's not the end of their story. Right? Like it is in some ways for me, because I'm taking care of them while they're in the hospital. But for so many folks, like those health issues, those problems, those follow-ups carry on weeks, months. I don't see it, but they live it. And there are so many people who are unable to access healthcare after that fact, after we discharge them from the hospital. And that is super frustrating.
How are you able to reconcile that? Because I mean, ultimately, you are part of this network, right? You're part of this machine that's denying folks access. How are you able to cope with that stuff?
I think trying to do right by your patients while they're in the hospital is at the very least you can do. Setting up follow-up appointments, making sure they have the right medication, prescribing an appropriate amount of medication, if they're leaving the hospital with some sort of medication, making sure they have the information to plug in if they need to, and making sure people know when they need to come back. Also, I think for someone who's like in a surgical residency, like making sure when people know that, like, if they have a problem, like if they had a procedure and now they, a week later, they don't feel well again, and they have, a fever and their belly hurts and they're nauseous and they're vomiting and all of these things, that they understand they have to come back. Like making sure, like, I don't think part of it is like the education to patients, that like access to healthcare is really hard, but if there's a moment where you need it, like, this is how you get it. Like, this is how you try to work this system into getting you the care that you need. We do that sometimes, where we say, like, if you have these symptoms and like you are like a post-op patient or something like that, like you come into the ED and like, or like let your doctor know who did your surgery that you're having these problems, and like someone from our team will go see you. Like, we know that we already get the heads up that you're coming in. So we're going to keep an eye out for you on the board when you come in through the ED, and we're going to come see you. We've done that too.
What about access to gender affirming care?
Gender affirming care. It's so sad that we're losing gender affirming care for folks who are under 18 and folks who honestly are like over 18. It's just really frustrating because I don't think people understand, like the people who make, who pass bills and who are making these decisions. I don't think they truly understand like what this kind of care means to people. And to be perfectly honest, until I also didn't fully understand until like I literally saw, at the University of Chicago, there is an attending who does gender affirming like vaginoplasties. And that is one of the coolest surgeries I have ever like watched. I didn't do anything. Like, as a general surgery resident, I didn't do anything. I just sat there and watched these surgeons operate. And when I say gender affirming care is like magic, it's like magic. And like understanding that like these people have worked, like these patients have worked, jumped through so many hoops to get here and to finally get the surgery that they like have been needing for maybe months, maybe years. It's so rewarding to see that and to understand that that is being taken away from people purely based on prejudice, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, is so frustrating. And I don't know.
I always say this. I'm gonna say this, that to me it doesn't make sense that we are in 2026. We have all types of amazing medical technology, medications, therapies. We have language. We have all types of shit at our disposal as human beings right now in this life. This is a good place. This is a good time to live, right? People used to die of pneumonia, right? We are in a place in life where we're at a good place. If you're sick, boom, you can go to the hospital and you're better. Taylor will operate on you, get your stomach together, get whatever it is. But what is the purpose of having all of this shit if everyone don't have access to it? Yeah. It's not relevant. I feel that we all have the right to live pain-free if we can, right? Not everything is going to be pain-free. Some things are painful. Some diseases, some things are just, you can manage it, but it's painful. But we all should have the right to be well.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I also don't understand, I think, right, if we have all of these, if we have all of this technology, if we have all of this medicine, like, what good is it if people don't have access to it, right? Like, what is
What's the point?
So what's the point? So like a few people who can pay for it have access to it. Like what's the point in helping a few people when you could help a lot more than just a few? And what's the point of, for example, gender affirming care? What's the point of taking away gender affirming care? Who does it hurt? Right? Like it hurts trans people, obviously, right? But like everybody else, like, does it hurt you for gender affirming care to exist? No, it doesn't.
Right.
Right. Like I think there's this thought that it's like a zero-sum game, right? If you have care, then you can't have care.
Yeah.
And that is just not how it works. You can have care and you other person can also have your medicine.
Yeah.
And yes, while there are resources that are limited, I just generally think that people think of it as a zero-sum game, and it's not.
Right.
Multiple things can exist at the same time, and multiple people can get care, and multiple populations can get better access. And it doesn't take away necessarily from other people having access, which I think is part of the fear.
Yeah. And it's not even a lack of resources. The resources are here. They're here.
Yeah.
If you can, I don't want to get into that, but if you can spend $1 billion bombing places, come on, man, everybody can get that medication. And why is it not okay? I'm just going to, why is it not okay for somebody of a trans experience to get surgery, but somebody else can go get a butt lift? It's the same thing as gender affirming care. That's what you feel that you need for your gender or for yourself. You can get lip fillers. You can do all these other things, but I can't get what I need. That's not fair, right? It's here.
Yeah.
Let's all get what we need. We would be so much happier if we all were healthier and can do what we want to do without limitations.
I agree.
That's a whole nother episode because we could talk about that forever. But Taylor, I really appreciate you being a guest on this show. This part of the show is the part where I love to ask my guests just a random question. I have a long list of questions that's growing. I have 85 questions on this list. I just want you to pick a number between 1 and 85, and I'll read you that question. Okay.
33.
Number 33 says, what is your favorite movie?
Probably one of my favorite movies is No Reservations. It's a pretty old, like, rom-com movie, but it's one of my favorite movies. It's about like a chef who ends up taking in her like sister's daughter after like a car crash or something like that. But it's like a cooking based movie.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Are you a cooker? Do you cook?
I cook a little bit. Okay. I cook mostly to sustain myself.
Okay.
But yeah, I cook.
Okay. All right. I've said what my favorite movie is plenty of times on here. My favorite movie is Love Jones. Have you seen Love Jones?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Okay. Hearing of it and seeing it, you gotta
seeing it, probably two different things.
Yes, you gotta check it out. Lorenz Tate, Nia Long. Yes, it's a classic. I love it. That's my favorite. I can watch it 1,000,000 times. Anyway, I want to say, Taylor, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking out your time to be a guest on the show. It's been a pleasure. Is there anything you want to say before we get up out of here?
No, but thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you and kind of just talking about a whole bunch of different things in a very organic fashion. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you as well.